Welcome everyone to Cleaver Magazine's faculty and editors reading. We're so happy that you're all here. We're really delighted to present these amazing writers who are all part of Cleaver's vibrant and ever-growing community. I'm going to pass it over to Karen Ryle, our founding editor-in-chief, to kick things off.
Hello, everyone, and welcome all of you to Cleaver Magazine's reading by our faculty and editors. My name is Karen Ryle, and I'm the co-founding and chief editor of Cleaver. 2025 marks our 12th year as a magazine in this world. We published our first issue in March 2013. For those of you who may not be familiar with Cleaver, we are a quarterly literary magazine. We publish fresh fiction, poetry, creative nonfiction, and flash every March, June, September, and December. We also publish book reviews, craft essays, and interviews, and a weekly newsletter where we send out writing tips from our contributors, staff, and community of readers. That's a popular feature, so check it out. There's one going out tomorrow morning, and consider writing a tip. In addition, we host a workshop and a masterclass series, which I hope you will check out. On Sunday, the 29th at 2 p.m., we're proud to be hosting a workshop by Kathy Fish, who's here tonight. Her workshop is called Ready, Set, Right, about our name. Cleave is a Janus word, also known as an autoantonym, meaning both itself and its opposite. To cleave is both to stick tight and to fall away. A cleaver is the most broad-edged and brutally efficient kitchen knife, designed to be swung like a hammer for the most effective channel of force. Cleave also means to come together with strong attachment. Cleaver runs its literary magazine on 100% volunteer labor with many fine editors, some of whom you'll hear tonight, whose invaluable contributions make our magazine possible. And we also thank our workshop staff. I want to say that at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, Kathryn Kulpa, who's our senior flash editor, she and I started the workshop series, just threw it together, and we've been going strong ever since. So we really appreciate your support as readers, as contributors, as editors, and as students in our workshop. Thanks to our host, Tricia Park, and thanks to our spectacular cast of readers tonight. And take it away, Tricia.
We're going to start off with Ilana Masad. Ilana is a Cleaver Workshop faculty member. She's a writer of fiction, nonfiction, and criticism whose work has been published widely. Ilana is also the author of the novel All My Mother's Lovers and the forthcoming Beings, which launches soon on September 23rd, 2025. Welcome, Ilana.
Yes, my new novel, Beings, is coming out on September 23rd, and I'm going to read the very short, don't worry, second chapter from it. There are three strands in the novel. One is about the first alien abductees, based very closely and self-consciously on Betty and Barney Hill. A lesbian sci-fi writer, also in the 1960s, and then a present day genderqueer archivist. And this is their first chapter. Now, a strand of fairy lights has finally given up the ghost, and the new shadows look menacing, unfamiliar. The archivist unplugs, replugs, but the strand doesn't mend itself. The orange shaded floor lamp will have to do. They refuse to use the overhead fluorescence when alone. Too cold, too impersonal. It's time for them to leave, but where they are feels more like home than the blank white box housing their possessions. One of 4 rooms in the apartment they share with 3 other adults they are not related to by blood or friendship. They've been meaning to put something on the walls, decorate those empty expanses with some color, but it's not like anyone else is ever there. There's no one to impress, to make comfortable. The archivist blinks. They've been staring at the glow on the old speckled tile for some time now. Habitually, they look back at their desk, their screen, and scan the new messages in their inbox. 2 are unimportant, another is irrelevant, and a 4th is a follow-up to a query that came earlier. A correction. The name of the woman whose papers are being requested is spelled without an A. Phyllis Egerton, not Egerton. The archivist dutifully makes note of this. Finding the writer's box is the first task they're going to tackle tomorrow. One more time they click refresh because there is comfort in the archive's after-hours quiet, because their mother has been texting confused and confusing dispatches again, and because stuffing their aching body into a sweater and a coat and scarf and hat and gloves feels overwhelming. A new email pops up. Subject line, aliens. Although they know they shouldn't, that they've given their underfunded, underpaying workplace enough of their time, they open it. It is addressed to them specifically, which is unusual. Normally they are simply to whom it may concern, or dear sir / madam to the scholars and doctoral students utilizing the archive, serious people whose formal education vastly outranks the archivist's, who has attained their position due to early luck, on-the-job learning, and a willful competence. This email, though, comes from an intern at a production company that's working on a documentary examining otherworldly visitors to New Hampshire, where UFO sightings and experiences with extraterrestrials are apparently not uncommon. The intern has identified the archivist as one of the children who attended Slopeside Elementary in 1996 and witnessed a strange event that received some media attention at the time. If the archivist would be willing, the intern writes, the documentary's producer would love to ask them on camera about what they saw. A YouTube link is included in the bottom of the email, and the archivist clicks it, baffled. They did attend that school for 2 years, but the video's title is Kids See Saucers in New Hampshire Schoolyard, 96, and they're certain that there's been some mistake. But then, there they are, their child self, 9 years old. They're sitting on a picnic bench, squinting against the sun as they talk to an interviewer. Their wispy hair hangs limp around their round face, and they have a tooth missing, visible as their small mouth moves silently, a microphone appearing and disappearing beneath it. The archivist watches, half convinced it's finally happened. They've truly lost touch with reality this time, since they can't hear anything but the hum of the computer fan. No, they're not hallucinating, they realize. The video is muted. They X out. They don't want to hear themselves or know what that child is saying. It's too weird, too disturbing. On their way back to the apartment, swaying with the movement of the train, their spine curves and their head droops, their body echoing the question mark filling their mind. Why don't they remember that interview? Why don't they remember any of it?
Up next, we have Andrea Marcusa. Andrea is wonderful and also one of our flash editors at Cleaver. Her work has appeared in Gettysburg Review, Citron Review, Cherry Tree, Heavy Feather Review, and others. She's received recognition in a range of competitions, including Smoke Long, Glimmer Train, Raleigh Review, and Southampton Review. She received honorable mention in the Cleaver 2022 Flash Contest. She studies with Philip Schultz at the Writers Studio, and for more information, you can visit her at her website.
I decided to read a short nonfiction flash. It's called How I Got Through the Week of September 8th, 2025, New York City. Think back to before the towers fell, before fear convinced you the ice cream truck on 86th Street was an FBI stakeout. Go back to before the years of lockdown and COVID, the masks, the hospital tent in Central Park, the cooling trailers for corpses. Remember way back to life before 2001, to playgrounds with 2 little boys, the way joy lit their faces. Remember pizza parties and those silly paper hats you made. Remember the time you cut 100 yellow stars and pasted them to 2 navy shower curtains that turned your foyer into a planetarium. Remember how the stars in their eyes outglowed the ones on the walls. Forget blue states and red states. Forget alligator Alcatraz and doxing. Remember the feel of wet sand on your feet as you watched your children build castles and dams. Forget the border wall and clips of young men, not much older than children, flung to the ground, tased and cuffs. Forget tariffs. Forget the violence that seems to erupt out of thin air. Forget AK-47s and hunting rifles and scopes. Forget knives and videos showing every gruesome minute. Instead, remember Beanie Babies and Happy Meals on Saturdays and riding the subway shuttle back and forth between Grand Central and Times Square because your boys love trains. Remember those parties with your husband, the tiny lamb chops perfectly cooked, the wine and water glasses discreetly filled, how your husband always turned heads in a tux. Remember the time when your only worries were homework and back to school haircuts and the next chapter of Charlotte's Web. Forget the California fires, Paradise and the Palisades, when lives and homes were turned to ash, the sky grew dark and the sun the color of blood. Instead, picture your mother's garden, the pink roses growing along the split rail fence, and the soft, gentle sweetness of their fragrance in the warm summer breeze. Remember her daffodils and lilacs. Don't think about the wildflowers you arranged with your sisters for your father's funeral reception. Instead, remember that cold January day when your father and you, while your mother and sister waited in the warm car, ran through the icy wind to the water's edge to touch the Pacific Ocean. Don't think about tucking your mother's urn of ashes under your airplane seat, the way it touched your foot as you flew east for her burial next to your father. Forget AI and cell phones and texts disturbing your thoughts. Listen to the sparrows and finches singing and the city's muffled August hum. Remember the luxury of believing in decades still to come, not the sand in the hourglass whispering that you are growing old. Think back to the warm weight of your infant son, how his body sank to sleep on your chest, wrapped in the quiet of trust, and how this connected you to something far greater than yourself. Imagine holding his tiny foot in your palm, his fingers curled around yours. Don't dwell on today's short, perfunctory phone calls filled with good intentions, but never enough time. You're back waving goodbye to your parents as they stood in their driveway watching you and your husband and boys head home, and you're absorbing the love and joy that fills the little sedan. Remember telling yourself to take a mental snapshot of the moment because you knew you were pulling away from this time in your life, every hour, every minute, like a lone skater gliding across spring ice, the world ready to crack open and swallow you. Don't think about where you'll live, how you'll survive if your husband dies before you. Remember your mother's voice, that life always brings sweet and sour, and that somehow everyone finds a way through. Think of the cardinal in Central Park that seems to alight on a nearby branch whenever you need your mother the most. Remember the pennies you spot on sidewalks when you're missing your father, and how your mother used to say that coins are from people who love you who have died. Go back to that time when the only thing that separated you were the miles between your husband's business meeting and home, and the flat of the ocean that sometimes appears between sets of waves, that calm sea you waited in until a perfect curl appeared, and you and your kids rode its crest all the way to shore.
Up next, we have Moriah Hampton. Moriah holds a PhD in modernist literature from SUNY Buffalo. Her fiction, poetry, and photography have appeared or are forthcoming in the Coachella Review, Type House Literary Magazine, Ponder Review, Gargoyle Magazine, Hamilton Stone Review, Poetry South, and elsewhere. She has received fellowships through Soaring Garden Artist Retreat, Martha's Vineyard, Institute of Creative Writing, and SUNY Albany Initiatives for Women. She currently teaches in the Writing and Critical Inquiry program at SUNY Albany and is a contributing writer at the New York State Writers Institute. Originally from the Southeast, she is of Scottish and English descent and a Cherokee Nation citizen. Welcome, Moriah.
Tonight, I'll be sharing 2 poems that explore connections to Cherokee ancestry, traditions, and culture. I became a citizen of Cherokee Nation in 2024 and have since been reconnecting to that part of my family history. So the first poem is titled Blanket. I am standing before the shelf that holds the picture of you as a boy on one of my visits to your split-level brick house that shouted, "We made it." Once, when alone, I removed the picture from the frame, seeking to understand what made us the wrong kind of family. On the back, I found 2 words written, your name and another in a language I could not read. Before anyone could scold me, I reassembled that picture and set it back on the shelf. That's my Cherokee name, you said later, then pronounced it for me, but you spoke too fast for me to repeat. Why'd you go looking at that? You asked, your eyes bulging, as if about to yell, but your mood turned and you bobbed in place, letting me glimpse the boy inside you. Excitement hung like a static charge in the air. In that same spot behind the recliner and before the shelf, we played once, your scrunched brow and downturned mouth transformed into a smile. You stepped towards me, buoyant, as if outside in a field or by a stream, your arm outstretched as if to say, come, join me. You arched back, your head tipped, a call escaped, as if a bird flew from your mouth, a call which I had never heard before nor since, a call which someone taught you, a call I wanted you to teach me, but you turned and climbed the stairs. For the rest of the day, you stayed angry, the boy disappearing again. Another time you gave me my Cherokee name. You joined me beside the shelf, a different man. The boy and you now grown. Your mouth opened and out came my Cherokee name, except I couldn't decipher it. I only knew you were giving it to me by the way you nodded, as if to say, that's who you are now. After you grew quiet and I desperately wanted you to repeat my name. 10 years later, across from the picture, you lay in a portable bed, hooked up to an oxygen tank, cancer eating away your lungs. Dad drove me over with the understanding it may be my last visit with you. By your bedside, I say what granddaughters are supposed to say. I'm sorry you're sick. I hope you're comfortable. Can I get you something to drink? You stare past me, silent. I follow your eyes to the picture with your Cherokee name written on the back. What would have become of you if that little boy had flourished inside longer? Would the Pendleton blanket that would wrap you in your coffin have remained unwrapped for years to come? Would you someday have told me why you stored Pendleton blankets for every member of the family in the closet upstairs? Blankets I found when you were not looking. And then the second one is returning. Along the Kahnawake River, I followed the path, winding through the park, decked with Christmas sculptures. Multicolored lights wink, water swooshes, speakers pipe, oh holy night. I walk to the wood planked bridge and encounter a locked gate on which is posted this sign. Attention anglers, eastern hellbenders, water dogs, are known to be present in this stream. If you catch a hellbender on hook and line, please immediately release the animal. Past the bridge, I encounter another sign. Registered sex offenders prohibited in restricted areas. How to make sense of this place? Along the nearest bank, I stride, craning my neck, searching for giant salamanders weaving around boulders, their long bodies leaving behind sand trails. Above, pink and purples from the western sun smudge the horizon, evoking a summer day when the river swells with people swimming, tubing, canoeing. I am among those people, as are you. Near the bank, I stand knee-deep in cool water, a younger me playing with a younger you. We splash, arms flailing, hands smacking the water. You point beneath a boulder nearby, a salamander's flat head is exposed. Then another head appears, and another, their slick bodies tucked underneath smooth granite. Present all along, alive only a few feet away, just as you stand near me on this gravel path, the outline of your form enduring, you who were with us then before being prohibited. I turn away from the river to find my way through shadows, drifting step by step.
Hana is our next reader. She's a Cleaver fiction editor. She also is an editor for creative nonfiction and Flash. She also is a winner of our 2024 creative nonfiction contest. Hana S. Elysia has written stories about sisters with strange names, women bursting into flames, and zombies with a weird appetite. Ooh, yeah. A professional dancer turned writer with a love for the eerie and ethereal, her work has appeared in WOW, Women on Writing, Pacific Review, Confluence, and elsewhere. She has won awards in fiction and nonfiction and serves as an editor of Cleaver magazine, and she reads multiple genres, as we mentioned. And you can find more of her work on her Substack or at Instagram.
I'm going to be reading the opening excerpt of an abstract fantasy piece, which was first published in the journal Confluence. So without further ado, this piece is called The Fifth Incident. You alone are able to recall a series of impossible incidents, inexplicable events that no one else seems to remember. When you try to remind those around you, you find that their memories have been washed away like sand by the tide. Never mind, you say. It must have been a dream. But it wasn't a dream, and you want answers. You'll try to figure it out on your own. Soon, your head aches from contemplating each event as if they're puzzles one step from being solved, words on the tip of your tongue. And the more you pry at their mystery, the more blotted the details become. If you continue to press and prod, your own memory may become blotted as well. You'll start over, ponder them in random order unimposed by a strained eye. Let them come to you as they will. You begin. Incident number 3, Royal Maddox Ballet. The theater curtains open on a highly anticipated night. It's the premiere performance of a famous ballet company, and in the middle of a sequence filled with pastel frill and ethereal spring, the prima ballerina staggers to a clumsy stop. The audience murmurs, uncertain if this is part of the choreography and surprised if it is, but it isn't. She sways awkwardly center stage as the other ballerinas dance around her, some watching with worry and stolen glances, while others snap whispers to her that go unheard. A trembling hand moves to her stomach as her gaze hovers above the crowd. Her gossamer makeup shimmers. At this point, she's supposed to be positioned on the prop balcony upstage, but the spotlight is empty and her fellow dancers do their best to adapt to the sweet string melody. The man with slicked hair who is cast as the prince approaches her and holds out his hand. This is unlike her. He intends to lead her off stage and thinks she must be terribly and abruptly ill. He'll carry her like the princess she's playing, and an eager understudy will take her place after a premature intermission. But that's not what happens. The prima ballerina's lips part as a broken sound escapes from her throat. The raspy drawl continues in a held note that crescendos louder and louder until even the audience can hear it, and they shift in their seats. The prince moves to intervene, but the prima screams. He jumps back. The ballerinas halt, utterly confused. The music fades into silence. The prima slowly looks down. Something ripples up her legs, the movement visible through her tights as it then skitters up her arms and neck. It resembles scales, rounded folds of skin that lift off her as their edges deepen in color. Some of them bloom blue, others rosy pink, and a few jasmine white. Flower petals. Her chin rises as the petals reach her face, and right before her frightened features are consumed, she drops to her knees. The petals shudder. She takes one last glance at the prince with her remaining eye. He sucks in a breath. He steps away. The prima's eye vanishes. The outline of her figure flutters, no longer solid flesh. Then, her floral socket collapses in on itself, followed by her head. It concaves into her body as her costume falls to the floor and forms a lifeless pile over her point shoes. A phantom wind sweeps in then, as if on cue. It swirls around the lonely costume and plucks up the petals, snaking higher and higher to meet the rows of lights that glow brighter and brighter. The blare causes everyone to squint, and when the lights dim and their sight adjusts, the petals are nowhere to be seen. The curtains sweep shut. You snap back to the present. The incident played out in your mind so clearly it felt like you were there, an invisible presence among the audience. You realize that you've been going about this the wrong way. Instead of searching for complex clues with a magnifying glass, you'll take note of the simplest information first, a location. You scrunch your eyes and focus. An image comes to mind, but it's obstructed, a blurry building lined with unfocused lights. Your thoughts are too strained again. Relax. You relax. So does the image. It's the ballet theater, golden and grand, and then you're zooming outwards to overlook the metropolis it resides in. A location slips into your memory, locking into place. New York City, New York. On to the next incident.
Next, we have Andrea Caswell. Andrea is a Cleaver senior fiction editor and a workshop faculty member here at Cleaver. Andrea holds an MFA in fiction and nonfiction from the Bennington Writing Seminars. She is senior fiction editor at Cleaver and is on faculty with us. She runs Cleaver's short story clinic, offering detailed feedback on fiction up to 5,000 words. Her work appears or is forthcoming in Tampa Review, the Coachella Review, River Teeth, the Normal School, Atticus Review, Columbia Journal, and others. She's an alum of the Sewanee Writers Conference and has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize. You can also take advantage of a limited time offer. Andrea is generously offering a free writing consultation to writers who want to jumpstart a project, revise a works in progress, revamp their practice, or problem solve their work. And so if you are interested in getting a free session with Andrea, you can visit her website and take advantage of that offer. Thanks, Andrea.
I'm going to read from an essay that's in an anthology called Rising from the Ashes. And its goal is to share stories about menopause for younger generations, because if we don't tell them those stories, who will tell them? So my essay is called The Perfect Age, and it's dedicated to my daughters. I know the names of several grandmothers and greats from whom I'm descended, Adelaide and Josephine and Apollonia, but I don't know much about their bodies. Growing up, my Grandma May taught me to crack an egg, how to juice a lemon, how to knead bread dough. She had an 8th grade education and didn't read for pleasure, but sometimes she read to me from a book with a black cover, which included stories of Baba Yaga. Oh, that Baba Yaga, she made mischief wherever she went. If my grandmother and I talked about the human body at all, it was while watching Jack LaLanne after lunch. He led us in stretches and jumping jacks and toe touches. We drank fresh carrot juice recommended for improving our eyesight and digestion. My mom didn't tell me much about menopause, but if she had, would I have listened or cared? In college, I bought Our Bodies Ourselves, but I didn't read the menopause chapter. I was more focused on birth control and childbearing. My mom took hormones in her 50s, perhaps I knew that, and at 70, she developed breast cancer. She had surgery and survived. For that reason, when I entered perimenopause several years ago and changes began, the hot flashes and dry skin and thinning tissues, I didn't consider taking hormones. I briefly used a cream containing estrogen, but I didn't like the way it made my breasts so tender. It seemed ridiculous, really, to have painful breasts and feel pregnant at age 54. So I stopped all of that and settled into the start of menopause. I didn't know estrogen was implicated in everything from cholesterol levels and pelvic floor strength to heart health and brain function. To be honest, I'd kind of taken hormones for granted. Now that I'm 58 and my estrogen has seeped away, I miss a few things. I miss supple skin and not worrying about sneezing too hard. I miss my libido. Sex just isn't that important to me anymore, nor is looking sexy. My goal is to never wear high heels again. My sweet husband, who's navigated the trickle of this diminished estrogen flow, still loves me as much as ever. When I developed a condition called frozen shoulder, he playfully called it cold shoulder, and we laughed. For previous rites of passage in my life, namely childbirth, I'd used positive affirmations to make the experience more, well, positive. Most cultural depictions of childbirth I'd seen showed actresses on sitcoms screaming in cars as their husbands drove like maniacs to a hospital. In adolescence, there was the frightening film in junior high health class that shocked us all. My mother nearly died when I was born due to a complication called precipitous labor. Clearly, childbirth was something dreadful to be feared, maybe even avoided, via anesthesia if possible. But when I was 24 and expecting my first child, somehow I knew childbirth didn't have to be awful. I sensed it was in fact very sacred, connected to all the birth energy in the universe. I practiced mantras like every contraction brings me closer to holding my baby, which, let's face it, was true. During labor, the affirmations made it easier for me to work with those strong uterine muscles. My daughter was born in a calm delivery with a midwife, and I learned I was right to believe in my body and its abilities. 3 decades later, I wondered if positive affirmations might help for the menopausal rite of passage. I like to sort through a deck of affirmation cards for articulate reminders of what I believe or when I need an extra zap of courage. Recently, I read one about aging. Each age has its own special joys and experiences. I am always the perfect age for where I am in life. How beautiful, I thought. It runs counter to what the wellness industrial complex would have us believe about our bodies, about the stages and seasons of life. But I'm not going to let society, especially capitalism, tell me how to feel about aging or sell me expensive ways to fight these natural changes in my body. The hardest part about aging is negotiating the surprise of change and the out of control feeling when changes occur, whether I want them to or not. I can choose my inner relationship to my body, though, how I talk to myself about it. Rather than step back from the mirror in horror when I find an age spot, I feel sure it's a privilege to grow old. I remember friends who died too young, Kim of cancer when we were 12, David of leukemia at 24, another David of AIDS at 37. They didn't have a chance to age. So when I catch myself thinking negative thoughts about wrinkles and spots, I try to replace that with gratitude. It's not toxic positivity or denial, just a choice about how I want to relate to my body. I'm trying to be true to myself, to this woman before me in the mirror. I say, hello, beautiful. Hello, person who has survived. Hello.
Up next, we have Mark Danowsky. Mark is Cleaver's poetry craft essays editor. He is also a Philadelphia poet. Hello, yay. He is editor-in-chief of One Art, a journal of poetry, senior editor for Schuylkill Valley Journal. I might be mispronouncing that, forgive me. Poetry craft essays editor for Cleaver magazine, as I mentioned, and a regular contributor to Versification. You can pitch him your craft essays at markdanowski@gmail.
So I'm going to share 4 poems, and they're from 4 different texts, which I'll just show off now, I guess. So As Falls Trees, which was my first little collection. John, which is Philadelphia. Meatless, which is sort of like my vegetarian story and mental health and things like that. And then Take Care, which is my newest one, which is 2025. And they're all kind of short poetry collections. First, from As Falls Trees, which is from Night Ballet Press, 2018, that came out. I actually, looking back on this, realized I basically exclusively write in free verse, but I might be saying this form wrong, but this is actually a charita. So the stanzas are one line and then two lines and then three lines, but super rare that I'm actually doing a formal thing. So this is what is lost, what will never be known. The pileated woodpecker returns to the dead white walnut. I am reminded we keep the dead with us in memory. We replay their highlights. When a person dies, we say we lost more than their life. What does the pileated mourn? My memory fails to serve, and I mourn what I will never know. This next one is from my Philly-oriented collection, John, which was all written in my 20s when I lived in Northwest Philly, and was published by Moonstone Press, which is local, which gets to be a little confusing because my most recent collection, Take Care, is from Moontide Press, which is over on the West Coast. So yeah, trickiness. But you know, everything that's a journal, right, is usually like a river or a mountain. So we can probably figure out different moon-related things as well. This is Sleep Deprived. Oh, and I should say, there's a nod to Elizabeth Bishop's poem Filling Station. So clearly Bishop was kind of getting under my skin sometime before I started One Art, since this was written back in 2012 and published in 2015 initially. Sleep Deprived. Driving to work from Northwest Philadelphia to the suburbs, I tear up listening to NPR's Morning Edition as Boston's once homeless and still homeless relate tales of their struggle. One writer says this opportunity to speak is a newfound reason to persist. Another does not downplay holiday season charity, explaining it imbues homeless with a sense of hope that carries through the coldest months. After the story ends, I pass rival steak shops where if you asked for a lager, you always get the same beer, then hit traffic by a filling station with time enough to watch a couple pump $5 worth of fuel. And if you know, you know, if you order a lager in the Philly area, it's going to be a Yingling. So from my collection Meatless, which is Plan B Press, that came out in 2022, this is Healthy Choices, which wasn't curated anywhere before it was collected. I don't know, feels worth saying that people put stuff in collections that they never publish in Litmax. Healthy Choices. There were the roommates who tried to live on white rice. This is not that. Real choice requires measured sacrifice. Is it so terrible to feel a little fatigue? How much pain and suffering can I tolerate to feel a little more whole? Yeah, so that collection is basically, it's sort of like a vegetarian journey thing. And there's also, as kind of alluded there, a bit of like disordered eating that comes into play, as well as mental health stuff as a conversation. And the last poem that I'll read is from my newest collection, Take Care. And yeah, it was first published in Gargoyle. This is Bird in a Box. Bird in a Box. Before I worked there, I saw a bird in the Walmart rafters while browsing seed for my feeders. I went to the hardware aisle, retrieved a 28-cent box cutter, and slit across. Subtle, I motioned to the bird. See how I try?
Next, I'm going to be reading. I am refused to read my bio for you. You can do that on your own time. And I'm going to read a little bit from a short story called Rondo. Over the course of several months, for almost a year, Sabrina kept seeing him on a spring day in Inwood, at a birthday party, a summer barbecue in Park Slope, on Halloween, a costume party in Hell's Kitchen, and on every occasion with a different, very pretty girl, a brunette, a redhead, a blonde, always one-on-one, always in a corner, the party swirling, always deep in conversation, or at least Sabrina thought the conversations looked deep. That winter, Sabrina moved into her first apartment, an L-shaped studio a block away from Carnegie Hall. It was tiny. Her twin bed and sofa, childhood desk, and bureau were wedged in tight like Tetris. If she reached across, she could almost touch both walls. Even still, she was giddy with independence and decided to throw a Christmas party. After stringing up twinkling lights with CDs from Tower Records and snacks from D'Agostino's, she sent a mass email. Nervous no one would come, she cast a wide net. Holiday party, food, booze, bring yourself, bring a friend, fa la 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 la. Listening to the dial-up bounce, she hit send. She needn't have worried. In the end, there were close to 50 people packed into that shoebox apartment. Looking back, Sabrina couldn't believe her neighbors didn't complain as the decibels rose with the rising tide of solo cups. The apartment was warm, radiators on full tilt, as a self-consciously top 40s mix of Britney and Christina, Backstreet Boys, and NSYNC blasted from portable speakers. Sabrina was surprised when around midnight she saw Leaf trailing in after Ying. Hey, Ying said, I brought my brother. I hope that's okay. Oh, sure, Sabrina said, nonchalant. We've met before, she considered saying, and thought better of it when Leaf greeted her with a cool, hello. The party crested around 2 a.m., after which the crowd thinned. Candles glittered, and Sabrina noticed that Leaf was sitting on the couch next to Cassie. They look cozy, Sabrina thought, and a snag of disappointment caught her throat. By then, only a few people were left in 2s and 3s. She got up to collect empties, refill the chip bowl. We're out of punch, Leaf startled her, standing in the kitchen entry. Okay, Sabrina said, her hands damp, hovering over the sink. I was just wondering, can I make more? His expression was friendly, if a little remote. Sure, she said, turning to open the fridge. The two of them leaned forward, hands on their knees. Together they studied the contents, a bottle of kava, some seltzer, and cranberry juice. He smelled faintly of Old Spice and cinnamon. She could feel his warmth radiating. He leaned over, and as if by accident, their shoulders touched. He turned, his face close to hers, before he backed away. Sabrina's heart buzzed. Do you have any ice? Leaf asked. Leaf's name was Nordic in contrast to his brother's Chinese name because, Sabrina would later learn from a photo album, the boy's father was a strapping Norwegian man who looked like Steve McQueen if he'd had long hair, and their mother the spitting image of Yoko Ono. And together they made these beautiful boys, one more beautiful than the next, which growing up in the 90s seemed to Sabrina like the dream, the quickest way to climb the ladder. After all, if racism against Asians didn't exist, especially in the 1990s, why wouldn't you want babies that passed for white with just enough of that je ne sais quoi to confuse and seduce? Halfies are hot, don't you know? Sabrina would learn this was yet another way she'd fallen short, not quite good enough in this category too, because half Asian beats full in the poker game of desire. Eventually, though, Sabrina would learn how confusing being biracial could be. Leaf would tell her how he could pass for, well, nearly anything, and what strange access this gave him. He'd be mistaken for Hispanic or Indian or indigenous or just, hot, like hot in the way that Westerners like them. See, exotic. It was almost summer the next time Sabrina saw Leaf. Ying and Isabella threw their annual end-of-school party. As Juilliard's golden couple, they lived together in the East Village, which seemed like a very grown-up thing to do. Sabrina was glad to be invited. Isabella was the kind of girl boys talked about. Sabrina overheard them. Most of them were brass players, so they'd forget to see Sabrina in the hallway, and holy fuck, they'd breathe. And Sabrina could almost hear the sound of their collective erections as Isabella picked up her violin case. Schwing, in 90s speak. Wayne's World, echoing silently in the background. Sabrina, it was anthropologically intriguing, this eavesdropping, but it was also empirically gross, like being a fly on the boys' locker room wall. In the months since Christmas, Sabrina found herself wondering about Leaf. What was that moment? A blip? Just a figment of her imagination? She'd shake her head, etch-a-sketch style. Whatever it wasn't enough to act on. Even though she kind of hoped to see him at the party, she was also nervous. So when a quick scan revealed that Leaf was indeed not there, she was disappointed but relieved. Soon she relaxed into chatting and drinking and forgot to think about him. Which was perhaps why, sometime later, Sabrina, dressed in linen pants and a sparkly top, feeling cute and pleasantly tipsy, surprised herself by saying, "Hi, Leaf." Through her gentle intoxication, she'd looked up and seen a blurry boy, very cute and very familiar. "Hi, Sabrina," Leaf said, and this time he sat down right next to her. After months of watching him sit next to other girls, Sabrina sat answering Leaf's questions, the recipient of his quiet, steady attention. He seemed enthralled in a way that Sabrina couldn't quite place, but she decided to go ahead and enjoy it. And then, many hours later, after everyone else had left the party, after Ying and Sabrina had started, discreetly, to tidy up, Leaf asked her, "Can I walk you home?" She laughed, but his face was serious. "You're gonna walk me home?" she said, incredulous, a little hiccupy. "I live all the way uptown. It's like 50 blocks." "That's not that far," he said, smiling. "It's just like a couple miles." "No," Sabrina said, and wondered if it was the wrong thing to say. "Well," he cleared his throat, "would it be okay if I called you then? Like, could I have your number?" Looking at his hopeful eyes, Sabrina could hardly believe it. He was nervous. He was worried she'd say no. Sure," she said, self-conscious for the first time that evening, "but I don't have anything to write with, or on." Leaf looked around. The room was dim with party lighting, and the record player skipped in silence. There were crumpled plates and cups, empty wine bottles and beer cans, a single cookie and some lonely carrots next to a half carton of onion dip, but no paper, no pen. "Can you hold on a second? Wait here, just for a minute. Don't go anywhere." He dashed theatrically towards the back of the apartment into a bedroom. Sabrina laughed and said, "Okay," to his back as he vanished. A moment later, and "I couldn't find any paper, but I found a pen." Leaf rolled up his sleeve. Sabrina looked up at him, confused. "You can write it here, your number." His arm was tan and smooth. Sabrina leaned over, a lock of her hair brushing against his wrist. She tucked it behind her ear, touching the pen gingerly to his skin. He smelled clean and familiar. She had to retrace the first number to get the pen started, and she didn't want to press too hard. She didn't want to hurt him. Exactly 3 days later, Leaf called. Leaving a message on her answering machine, he asked her on a date, a dinner one, at Café Mozart, named unironically, complete with Wiener Schnitzel and Austrian cakes, where he told her that he too had seen her that spring, that summer, that past fall, at the birthday party, the barbecue, Halloween. And 6 months later, when he said, "I love you," looking comically surprised and then worried as they stood in her bathroom, brushing their teeth, she said it back, first to his reflection in the mirror, and then turning to him, lacing her fingers through his, their heads close together. "I love you too." And later, in the too small bed, in the too small apartment, he murmured, "I would have walked you home that night. I really wanted to walk you home." And Kathryn Kulpa is next. Kathryn is Cleaver's senior flash editor and workshop faculty. Kathryn is amazing. She's one of our most popular and beloved teachers. Her flash fiction chapbook, Cooking Tips for the Demon Haunted, is released by New Rivers Press. She is also the author of 2 flash fiction chapbooks, Cooking Tips for the Demon Haunted from New River Press and Girls on Film from Paper Nautilus, a story collection, Pleasant Drugs, from Midlist Press, and a micro chapbook, Who's the Skirt? Origami Poems Project. Kathryn has published stories in Best Microfiction, 5 South, Florida Review, Ghost Parachute, 100-Word Story, Monkey Bicycle, Moon City Review, Smoke Lawn Quarterly, Wig Leaf, and other journals and anthologies. Kathryn has taught writing workshops at Stone Coast Writers Conference, International Women's Writing Guild, and Write Space, and was a visiting artist at Wheaton College. Please welcome Kathryn.
I'm going to read 3 micros. I'm going to start with a 6-sentence story from Gooseberry Pie magazine, and it's called Redemption Street. We knew every house on the street. The Campbells, whose daughter Tricia was our babysitter. The Lopes, whose twin boys monopolized the local paper route. The Francises, whose teenage daughter ran away last year. At the top of the street, Victorian manses leaned, green moss eating their shingles. Further down, post-war suburbia reigned, jalousie windows, white curlicued railings, sprinklers that never stopped sprinkling. Houses ended when asphalt tapered into dirt. Uprooted trees told us there would be more. That summer, diggers savaged the soil, exposed earthworms wriggling away in halves. Tunnels lay half-built like severed arteries we crawled through, jungle explorers, until we found a shoe, stiff and gray-caked, heel sticking out of the dirt. And we pulled and pulled, but didn't start screaming until we saw the foot. This piece was just published earlier this month in Ghost Parachute, a wonderful journal, and it's called What the Femme Fatale Would Do. If I were the femme fatale in a film noir, I would transmute beauty into necromancy. My face would be the rock men would break their ships upon. My chiseled cheekbones, my shadowed eyes, staring without compassion, the ageless mask of a Greek goddess. I would ensnare them as they sailed past my island, my wine-dark lips beguiling as a siren's song. No wax could stop their ears against my hushed whiskey voice, eyelids drooping languidly, smoke drifting from the cigarette in my careless hand. If I were the femme fatale, stark shadows of branches crossing my face like the bars of a jail cell, no man could walk away. I would be the spider woman ensnaring them in my web. I wouldn't be the one wrapped in thread, left hanging, a trophy caught but no longer wanted. The femme fatale wouldn't go back to the well that's so clearly dry, wouldn't cancel plans, miss opportunities, refresh her phone every 10 seconds, waiting for 3 dots to fill a screen. With what? An apology? An explanation? A promise? This time I'm going to leave her. She wouldn't wait for that well to refill. The femme fatale wouldn't let herself be exposed on the jumbotron, wouldn't be the punchline, the side piece, the error in judgment he self-justifyingly apologizes for. The femme fatale wouldn't wait to be caught on camera. The femme fatale would be the camera. She might fall, but she would never stumble. She would fall like a rebel angel, like an avenging fury. The femme fatale would take him down with her. The femme fatale might be caught in a trap, but she'd escape. She'd rip a rich man's earrings from her ears and never mind the pain. She'd crash a car, smash a window, pull a pearl-handled gat from under her fur coat. It's always a rainy night when she gets away. Black cars, headlights like dull stars, hair in a snood like a medieval nun on the lam. The femme fatale lives in shadows, but she knows when to shine a light. She's the camera obscura, the recording angel, the girl who keeps the books, who knows where the bodies are buried, and so many are. The femme fatale yells cut, calls for a final edit. She pulls the page from the platen, starts a new page, tells a new story with an ending only she knows, Typewriter keys hammer black ink, indelible as truth. The femme fatale does what she must. She survives. And one more, this is my newest piece that was just published in Literary Namjooning, which is a great new journal. And it's called Surfer Girl. When you roll tumbled from the waves like a defuzzed towel from a dryer, fingers dragging sand from your mermaid hair gone free, stretched out scrunchy, lost to the waves, and you jelly legs stagger to shore, tug your ankle strap, and your board bobs up like the best good dog, a dog who always comes when you call and never runs away because somebody's uncle beat him. And you stand while this whole world whirls around you, muscles you didn't know you had, singing a wild chorus. Find the horizon, take stock. A cut on your chin, split lip bleeding salt into salt, friction burn on your knee, one toenail hanging on by the tiniest tough corner, and you know later you will rip that last shred off and walk into school, bare-toed and proud, while the pretty girls snark, "Nice pedicure," and you laugh, because this is better than pretty.
Up next, we have Marnie Goodfriend. Marnie is a Cleaver Workshop faculty member and has a class coming up for Cleaver in November. Marnie is a health and lifestyle journalist, trauma-informed writing instructor for emotional wellness, a workshop leader, and writing coach. She covers women's health, gender politics, relationships, mental health, and sleep, as well as celebrity profiles and as told to women's health journeys. A 2016 Penn Center USA Emerging Voices Fellow, she's currently completing two memoirs, Birthmarks, about the marketing and selling of white babies in the US, and her experience as a Black market adoptee, and The Time It Takes to Leave My Body, examining the re-victimization of sexual assault advocates, and her cold case was solved a decade later by DNA. You can also learn more about Marnie, about her work and her writing and services at her website. The class she's teaching for Cleaver will be posted soon, so keep an eye out for that. It's called Writing the Body.
I thought I'd read a book excerpt mostly about trauma, because that's typically what I write about. But something told me to throw a little curveball with a humor essay called The D's, and I hope it makes you smile. According to Victoria's Secret Angel Bra Guide, I own an unremarkable pair of 34B breasts. They don't belong to the very sexy or dream angel clubs. My tits hang with the lightly padded and sports bra crowds. 34Bs don't inspire gazing or sonnets printed about them, or even a free burrito from Taco Bell. They are typical breasts, punching their time card as employees that serve no other purpose than signifying that I am most likely a woman. My breasts made their debut when I was 9 years old, and thanks to them, I became that girl, the first girl, a girl hiding under her unwanted 34Bs under extra large sweatshirts. I stared down at my top and told them to come back later, but they wanted to be beauty pageant waving at onlookers from a carnation float gliding down Fifth Avenue at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. I wanted to die of embarrassment. I borrowed tops from my father, telling my parents that everyone who was anyone was wearing that plaid shirt that dads raked leaves in at school. Tits made me lie about my body, my age, and how I felt in my own skin. My breasts were the keynote speakers at my 11th birthday, as if their growth spurt was a cause for celebration. I now possess two monstrous balls of fat tissue spilling out of a training bra that had clearly excelled at its job, forcing my stepmother and me to take that long, awkward trip to the intimates department for a proper fitting. A blue-haired bra specialist exclaimed that I was well endowed for such a petite young lady and assured me that she would locate the most supportive brassiere for my size D bosoms. I hate you both, I told them as they hung there smugly, doing nothing besides being attention whores, monopolizing my afternoon. when I could have been riding bikes with my friend Tracy, who was still blissfully breastless. By that time, I memorized my high school locker combo. The D's were no longer an embarrassment. They made me special. Guys wanted to touch them, girls wanted to have them. I dressed them in expensive bras with lace trimming, push-up padding, and even gave them wire support. Only the best for my girls. They were the popular ones, the prom queens, satin sluts disguised as honor roll students. When talking to guys, I didn't even bother reminding them that my eyes were up here. Senior year, they were voted most likely to succeed and cutest couple. In college, I power walked from my dorm to a women's only gym in a blue unitard, tightening those arm wings with butterfly curls as Debbie Gibson's Electric Youth pumped through the loudspeakers. By winter break, I'd achieved to bounce a quarter off that ass, but something else had left the building. The D's were gone. My trust shrank into my training wheel 34Bs, old frenemies I no longer had anything in common with. Where did you go? I whispered to the D's in between the library stacks. I heard their stilettos clicking on the marble floor, their voices deep like day 2 laryngitis. They were sexy and smart because they too had gotten into NYU and were studying for their midterm exams. You didn't want us, they replied. But you can't leave me now. I'm the tiny girl with the large breasts, I told them. Remember how you strapped us down and hid us under those heinous neon sweatshirts? We got you noticed, and just when we thought you had accepted us, there you were deflating us at Lucille Roberts. Their voices got soft. Why were you so embarrassed by us? I never knew that the D's were independent contractors, and if mistreated, they could quit. I failed to recognize their tenderness. When I was young, they said that you two would get me in the type of trouble I wasn't ready for, that I couldn't have brains and big breasts. Will you ever be happy with any part of your body? They asked me. I shook my head no, and felt the weight of them one last time as they hugged me, then left me for good. As I got older, my breast size fluctuated from an A to a B with the slightest rise and fall on the bathroom scale. To this day, I still struggle with body issues. Is that me in the mirror or some warped lens I'm looking through? But my breasts and I have learned to live with each other, maybe even become sentimental about our shared history. We've been through a lot together, from our first training bra to dealing with unwanted attention, then too much attention, to the boys who didn't know what to do with us, men who knew exactly what to do with us, who taught us sensuality and their power. But most importantly, I was learning to love this sensitive twosome at any size, from the free hanging A's to my former fierce D's. These days, breast talk tend to revolve around healthcare and health issues. In coming into acceptance of my breasts, no matter what bras I'm wearing today, they now need me to keep a vigilant eye on them, to give them more than just lightly padded support. They are a part of me I don't want to lose. I am concerned about them in ways I have never been before. So while gravity may weigh them down, it is my job to lift them up.
Up next, we have Francine Witte. Francine has poetry and fiction that's appeared in Smokelong Quarterly, Wigleaf, Mid-American Review, Passages North. Her latest books are Dressed All Wrong for This from Blue Light Press, The Way of the Wind from Ad Hoc Fiction, and The Theory of Flesh by Kelsey Books. She is a flash fiction editor for Flash Boulevard and the South Florida Poetry Journal. She's an associate poetry editor for Pigeonholes, and her chapbook, The Cake, the Smoke, the Moon, Flash Fiction, was published by ELJ Editions in September 2021. She lives in New York City. Francine is also one of Cleaver Workshop faculty members.
This is called This Won't Take Long, Will It? When it's autumn and its leaf curl and twig snap, and our old next door neighbor is raking, and we want to help him because he is himself a crackled tree. When it's autumn and the mounds of leaves are piling all around our next door neighbor, and he waves in our direction, "Hey kids," he even says, And before we can wave back at him, our father is calling us into the garage. When it's autumn and it's cider tang and pumpkin squish, and our father is our father, but didn't he see our neighbor? See the barky scratch and wrinkles that have written the story of his life all over his face? We walk inside the garage, all benches and tools and paint, and our father is fixing a lawn chair, reweaving a hole in the seat, frayed green and white plastic fabric. And we don't know why this is important now when it's autumn. Our father points us all to a bench so we can watch what he is doing, so we will know for ourselves someday. One of us finally says, "This won't take long, will it?" Our father stops weaving and says, "Well, that isn't the point." One of us wants to know what is the point, but we all know not to ask. Once, when it was summer, lemonade squinch and skeeter buzz, some of us squeezing into the lawn chair, we asked why our mother went away, how we didn't know if she had died or if it was something else. We wanted to know the point of her absence, and our father wouldn't talk to us for a week until one of us finally said, "Well, now it's like we have no parents." When it's later autumn, turkey sniff and fire crack, and we haven't seen our neighbor in a month, we wonder why he went away. The leaves have been falling and falling, and one of us even says that the old man is buried underneath. Another one says they heard that the old man fell over timber from a heart attack, that it didn't take long and that death probably waved at him from across the yard. When our father hears this, he says that's not any truer than what happened to our mother, and that the less we think about death, the better, that life is only here for a minute or so, and it really doesn't take long. We wonder if that is the point he is trying to make. The hang of snow, heavy, invisible, the winter about to begin. The next one, I actually wrote in Kathy Fish's retreat workshop. She gave us a prompt, and the prompt was like, we all had to write down on a piece of paper a secret, and then she gave it to, she gave it out to different people, and I've never known whose this belonged to. And I think the prompt was, they saw someone having sex with a ghost. So I'll get to the bottom of that someday. This is called It's Ghost Time Again, and actually this was published in Cleaver. It's ghost time again, and my mother doesn't know, but I know, and it shivers me like stone February to see this ghost that's not at all like my father, who is lonely and clean-shaven. This ghost doesn't give a hoot that my mother is asleep, but I'm not so sure she'd stop it, because if sleeping in separate rooms is any indication, my father hasn't touched her in years. And that started around the time he lost his job and moved himself a sock at a time, a shirt at a time, until he was gone. And now they are both sexless. But at least my mother has sleep, not like it used to be with her walking the floorboards, tango or foxtrot or whatever the hell. I live in the room under hers, and when she stopped moving, I went up there, and that's when I saw the ghost, his white, ghosty sex hand trailing up her nightgown, and she'd moan and shift, and she really seemed to like it, big smile crossing her sleepy face. And that's when I came to realize that a ghost can be a better lover than a real life lover, and it just might change how I think about dating and marriage, which, to tell you the truth, it's kind of a dead thing anyway. And then I have one more little teeny tiny. It's called I Planted a Cat. Just hair, of course, and bits of meow. I planted these cat seeds the way Mama planted her lonely roses. I wanted to grow a second cat so my already cat would have someone to love him. Then I planted my daddy's hairbrush, the one he left when he left. Up next, we have Jess Silfa. Jess is a Cleaver faculty workshop member,
and is an Afro-Latin writer from the South Bronx. They graduated with an MFA from Vanderbilt University and are currently an Albert C. Yates Fellow in the PhD program at the University of Cincinnati. Jess is president of the Disabled and D/Deaf Writers Caucus and has been published or has work forthcoming in AMLY, Bee Stung, Transition Magazine, and others. Welcome, Jess.
Y'all are getting some fresh stuff today. This is brand new from a manuscript I'm working on about a young woman who spends a summer working at a natural disaster themed theme park in Central Florida. Greetings from Disasterville. Prologue. Vida Rodriguez likes to eat lunch inside the hurricane simulation room. It isn't a huge room, only about 20 by 20, but it is built to resemble a 1950s kitchen. The floor is black and white checkerboard, framed by minty green cabinets and white appliances. Roy had bought them from a scratch and dent place years ago. There's an island with stools for a family to sit at and eat breakfast, a toaster and stand mixer bolted to the counters, and dishes superglued inside the sink. There's even a stove with multiple warming drawers, and on the wall beside a peach-colored landline hangs one of those cat clocks with a swinging tail. The audience, which is to say Disasterville's guests, can sit or stand wherever they want. Some choose a stool, some lean against the counter. There are also what Roy calls the boring seats, typical theater-style seats with a few gaps for wheelchairs and the like. Those are especially useful for younger school groups who would otherwise crawl all over the counters and floor. The simulation rooms in Disasterville all have a similar setup. Large IMAX-style screens curve around each theater, which are made to resemble the rooms of a house. The Kansas Twister Experience is in the dank cellar. The Quake Quandary is in a bathroom. The Mississippi Flood is in the living room. Vida had started with the flood. It was the example room used in the training videos during her new hire orientation. In that video, a family sits on a couch, their faces illuminated from the rising waters they're watching in awe. It looks relaxing. Not wanting to suffer through small talk with her new coworkers, Vida grabbed her lunch bag and settled into one of the flood room couches during her break. She scarfed down her tuna sandwich and drank half of her Coke by the time the simulation began. As she looked around, Vida clocked the characteristics of a real emergency. People loitering, hands wringing, not knowing what to do or expect. Around them, the screens showed windows overlooking a calm Gulf shore while the announcer rattled off facts. Then the storm arrived. The speaker system boomed with thunder, and the bulbs in the ceiling flashed, imitating the look of lightning bolts. Water began lapping at the corners of the video, then rising, until the room looked surrounded by murky water full of fish, bicycles, and lawn furniture. Cracks appeared on the screens, mimicking windows that couldn't withstand the flood's pressure. As the audience gasped, the lights went out, and the sound of rushing water enveloped the room. Vida didn't learn any of this until later. That first day, when the room got dark and there was still the gentlest whooshing of waves, she was lulled to sleep. She was startled awake a few minutes later and realized the simulation was over. A family of four stood staring at her, perplexed. The youngest child, a boy not much older than 5, was poking her cheek with one of the giant pencils sold in the gift shop. His lower lip was trembling. Vida knew she had to say something. She considered making a crack about working too hard or asking if they were enjoying their visit to the center. What she actually said was, "Did you enjoy drowning?" The young boy burst into tears. Roy found out about Vida falling asleep by the end of the day. When he called her into his office and yelled at her for being unprofessional, Vida wondered if that was how a family spoke to each other when angry. She hadn't grown up around much family. "God," Roy said. He put his hand on his hips and a sleeve slid down from his elbow to his wrist. "Who falls asleep the first day on the job?" "I'm sorry." Vida felt her lip curl, a telltale sign she was about to cry. She was angrier than anything. I mean, it had been her lunch hour, and she was tired. And who had made a room in Disasterville so warm and inviting in the first place? She resisted the urge to sniffle by looking around the office. It was one of the biggest, and it was full of sunlight. That allowed Rita to see all the dust motes in the air and the thin layer that coated the photographs of Enid and Sarah on the walls. A company portrait taken at the front of the building hung behind the desk. It had been before most of the current employees' time. An updated photo didn't seem to be a priority. Roy cleared his throat, and Rita shifted her gaze from the portrait to his face. Then she looked away again. I know I messed up, Mr. Elroy. I was just so excited about the job, I couldn't sleep last night. And then when I went to check out the flood room, it was so relaxing, I fell asleep. Roy frowned. And by relaxing, you mean boring. Roy seemed to take the comment personally, as if he had designed and built the flood room with his own two hands. Rita realized that he might have, actually. She didn't know. He scrutinized her outfit, her box braids, her hoop earrings. He lingered on her breast a second too long, and Rita's cheeks grew hot. She crossed her arms, which broke him out of his staring. He had the decency to look embarrassed and quickly turned around. If I catch you sleeping on the job again, I have to let you go. Rita wanted to curse him out and call him a pervert. You knew me when I was a baby. She was surprised that this was her first thought and wondered why people always resorted to it. I'm somebody's sister, I'm somebody's daughter, etc. Fuck that, I'm human, she wanted to say, and you just made me feel so gross. She opened her mouth to speak, but Roy cut her off. Rita, he said, please just leave. Yes, sir, thank you. She turned around and hurried out the door, wishing the quick quandary had a pit she could throw herself into.
Next, we have Jennifer Fawcett. Jennifer is also one of our workshop faculty members. Before writing books, Jen was an award-winning playwright and co-founder of the Theater Company Working Group. She is the author of Beneath the Stairs. Born and raised in Canada, she spent a decade living in the Midwest before settling in the Hudson Valley. She holds an MFA from the Iowa Playwrights Workshop. Her plays have been published by Original Works and in Third Coast Magazine, Reunion, the Dallas Review, and in the anthology Long Story Short. You can check her stuff out at her website, jenniferfawcettauthor.com. And her next book is coming out any day now. Her new book called Keep This For Me is available October 7th. So check it out. I think she might be reading from it.
So yes, I'm going to read from my new book, Keep This For Me. So this is a psychological thriller, as was my last book. It's loosely based on a true story, very loosely. It's about a woman whose mother was the victim of a serial killer 30 years ago, except that on his deathbed in the present, he confesses that he didn't actually kill her, that something else happened. And so she's trying to figure out what that is. It runs in multiple timelines. So I'm going to read the prologue. It's really short. This is going to be a short reading. We're at the end of the night anyway. And so this is actually that woman's mother, and what actually happened that night. So prologue, Anna, August 29th, 1993, 1:30 a.m. The lake is the great devourer, the giver and taker of life. It has its own weather system. Its water circulates up into the bluest blue summer sky, gathers into fat-bellied purple clouds, and then slams down into itself with glee. On the surface, the living splash. Their pleasure boats tear up the calm water. Their fishing poles dip in to feed. They think they own the lake, but it is only letting them play. When it decides, it will swallow them whole. Ask the ones below. Ask the sailors who lie in their broken beds with undelivered boxes of coal, of wool, of rum and buttons. They sleep where the water moves slow and dark and holds its secrets. The young woman who swims now, trailing blood from a gash on her leg, believes this lake will save her. She loves this water and has swum in all its moods, but if she gets too weak, she too will slip under and join the sleeping ones on the bottom. It's night, and there's a summer storm. the sudden electric kind that rips a hole in the sky and then is gone just as quickly. On the shore of the nearby campground, the families huddle in their tents and listen to the rain and wind. They hear the waves crashing, but none of them know about the young woman out in that churning darkness, swimming for her life. They will learn soon. A shoe in the sand, a purse in the grass. These are what remain. In the coming days, they will watch the news and say, "We were camping so close when he killed her." They will shiver with the glee of voyeurs. And the lake will go on. The rain will fall, the waves will hit the beach, and below the surface, the dead will keep their secrets.
And our final reader for the evening is Kathy Fish, who's also a Cleaver faculty workshop member. And Kathy has a class coming up soon for us on September 28th. Kathy Fish's stories have been widely published in journals, anthologies, and textbooks. Her work has been published in Plowshares, Guernica, Swamp Pink, Electric Literature, Denver Quarterly, Best American Non-Required Reading, The Norton Reader, and Norton's Flash Fiction America 2023. She has been honored with a Copper Nickel Editor's Prize and multiple appearances in both the Wigleaf Top 50 and the Best Small Fiction series. The author of 5 short fiction collections, Fish teaches a variety of writing workshops online and in person. She's also published a best-selling craft newsletter, The Art of Flash Fiction, which was recently named one of the 20 best creative writing substacks by writers at work. Her writing has been generously supported by fellowships from the Ragdale Foundation and the Kerouac Project.
This one, I'm proud to say, was chosen by Amy Hempel for Best Small Fictions a few years ago. So it's called Strong Tongue. The dentist is attempting to install 2 crowns on my teeth, but he has to call in reinforcements. "Can you just try to keep your tongue out of the way?" he asks. A man and a young woman come into the room. The woman is normal sized, but the man is the size of a bull. He doesn't look like a member of the dental profession. Maybe he's just brought in when someone has a very strong tongue. The woman pries my mouth open with some contraption, and the bull-sized man clenches my tongue in his gloved hand. "It's like a bucking bronco," he says. Some of his spit lands on my eyelid. The snow pile in the middle of the cul-de-sac, once shaped as the Matterhorn, has shrunk and gone sooty. There's a half-eaten sandwich at its base. I kick some snow over it. Supreme, the neighbor dog, paws it out and eats it. I call my mother and tell her about the new wrinkle on my forehead, deeper than the others. I tell her about the dentist. All these things are happening to my body. I hear her chewing. "Why do you care?" she says. "You were never that pretty." My tongue is strong because I have figured out a trick, and it's this. If you press your tongue hard to the roof of your mouth and you make a half smile, it makes your neck look younger and firmer. After my dentist appointment, I had driven to King Soopers and sat sobbing in my car. An old guy tapped on the window. He gave me his monogrammed hanky in a lecture on 90-degree parking. Supreme the dog belongs to the man across the street. He'd once had a wife, but she died in her sleep soon after they were married. He said for 6 weeks, all he did was drive around eating Taco Bell with the radio blasting. He rescued Supreme from a puppy mill. She'd had so many litters, her nipples were raw and hard as pebbles. My mother says I shouldn't take the new job in the new city. She reminds me how often I get lost, even with GPS, and that takes some doing, she says. Have you forgotten those 3 months in St. Louis? My tongue is strong because I hold it so much. When I meditate, I listen to solfeggio tones through my headphones. I have some things to get over, and my doctor says it will release my anxiety and open my third eye. My doctor isn't a real doctor, but she makes me feel better. I lie back and imagine I'm in the dentist's chair and they're all telling me how good I am, how I'm no trouble at all. Behind my eyelids, I see snow and tongues and teeth. I see my own neck, long and smooth as the stem of a daisy.
Wow, thank you everyone so much for all of your work and the time you took to be here and read for us. We're so excited to be in community with you. Um, let people know about Cleaver. If people, including all of you all, want to submit work to Cleaver, we're always um, looking for new great stuff. It comes out quarterly. We have classes coming up, and I'm gonna let Karen have the last word.
Yeah, I'm just blown away by the richness and variety of this reading. You all did so well. And I think the order was just kind of random, like throwing up pickup sticks and that's how it fell or something. But it almost felt like you guys had like coordinated with each other to come up with a really wonderful sort of progression. And like we had the comic relief and we had the really seriousness and then we had the heart-stopping sort of thriller stuff. So it just seemed very well choreographed, and I'm so proud of you guys.
Thanks, everybody.